US presidential candidate Marianne Williamson won the first two Democratic debates in the 2020 election, described as a long shot in the 2024 election. Janie Seal asked Marianne in this Australian exclusive interview why she is running for US president for a second time.
Marianne Williamson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, so plenty on your agenda. Now let's go back to when you won the first two debates in the last presidential campaign and in fact were the most Googled after the first debate. However, others are describing you as a long shot for 2024. Why are you running as president for a second time?
Well, look who's describing me as a long shot. Those who are describing me as a long shot are those who simply don't want me to be in the race. By the way, Donald Trump was quite a long shot when he began. Barack Obama was considered a long shot when he began. Nobody can predict who's going to win a political campaign.
And Marianne, are you doing anything different to last time when you ran for president?
I don't think it's so much that I'm doing something different as that I think the country is quite different. You know, 4 years ago, there was such a sense that Donald Trump was this singular figure who posed a particular threat. People considered him a risk to our democracy, or at least those who wanted him defeated did. But there was a sense that if only we could defeat Donald Trump, that we could all go back to normal. And there's a realization now that nothing is ever going back to quite what it was, and that many of the problems that people feel that he inspired are with us and are with us still. So the problem in America today is more than just defeating one political figure. It's defeating a kind of malevolent ideology, an ideology that we're seeing rise up all across the globe that is autocratic, that is authoritarian in nature. So I think people take very, very seriously the risk that is posed by something that goes beyond one candidate. And I think that people are more open now than they were even 4 years ago to listening to ideas that come from various sources about what we need to do in order to provide for the American people a compelling enough alternative that they will not choose such a direction as that.
It's interesting looking at your different platforms, Marianne, on YouTube, TikTok. Why do you think your popularity is increasing among the younger population?
I think that what I have to say is particularly compelling to people who weren't even born in the 20th century or just hung out there as babies for a while. You know, my whole message is to young people, why should you have to live your lives at the effect of bad economic ideas left over from the 20th century? They're not stupid. They look around and they look at some place like Australia and they say, well, why do they get universal health care, but we don't? Why do they get tuition-free college and university, but we don't? They see that these things are granted to the citizens of every other advanced democracy. And when they hear someone like myself say, yeah, why don't you? Hello? They are not as vulnerable to the ideas that some people would promulgate, such as, well, we don't have those things because it's complicated. Young people hear me when I say, no, you don't have those things because it's corrupt. And these young people don't have the institutional memory of a time when government did have their back. These young people today are living without certain economic prospects and hope of opportunity that even I had when I was their age. So on one hand, they have this natural rambunctiousness of youth, but particularly a realization that something is off in this country, and they have more openness, I think, than some people even older than they are in many cases, to knowing we need to take a fundamental economic U-turn. Something's off at the center of things, and the idea of radical change doesn't disturb them, because they realize that incremental change in the direction of making things better will not be enough to answer the challenges of this time.
And Marianne, what makes you a better candidate than your Democratic challengers, current US President Joe Biden and Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
You know, this is going to be a different race than 2020. We're very grateful to President Biden for defeating Trump in 20, but this is different. This is different. The president has made, as I was just saying, incremental changes, but we need a fundamental economic U-turn. And what I am saying is that nothing less than that will be enough, first of all, to stave off the kinds of disasters that could be headed our way as a democracy and even as a species over the next decade or so if we don't. But also, I don't think anything less than that will be enough to defeat the Republicans in 2024. You know, there's a reason reason why 8 out of 10 Democrats, likely Democratic voters, want to see the president debate his primary challengers. There's a lot of rumbling. There's a lot of rumbling that what the president is offering and who the president is not necessarily something we should just assume represents the best that the Democrats could offer in 2024.
You just mentioned the 8 out of Democratic voters wanting Joe Biden to debate. That was in the recent survey that was in USA Today and Suffolk University, as you well know. So why is that? And are you wanting to debate yourself?
Well, of course I want to debate. I mean, that's what a race campaign is. You know, a campaign is a long job interview, and the voters should have access to all of the options that are available to them. That's what a candidate represents. It's somebody applying for the job. So you interview that person who is applying for the job. You get to meet that person. You hear what they would do with the job if you gave it to them. And the American people, that's what a democracy is. The voters should make that decision. This decision should not be made by a bunch of elite at the DNC. Like 100 years ago, with a bunch of men smoking cigars and deciding who's going to be the candidate. That's what democracy is. It's governance by the people. And particularly at such a critical time in our history as this, the Democratic voters should have access to the ideas and the personality straight on that they get to see on a debate stage, particularly debating the president, so that the voters themselves can decide who should we choose to nominate for 2024 and to lead this country for the next 4 years.
Marianne Williamson, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a very busy schedule. We really appreciate your time and joining us here in Australia on Sky News.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.